President-elect Donald Trump is drawing new criticism as he begins to build the next administration. His decision to appoint Steve Bannon, the former executive chairman of Breitbart News, as his chief strategist has drawn sharp rebuke over Bannon's ties to the white nationalist-leaning alt-right movement and over Bannon's extensive history of publishing anti-Semitic material. The newly appointed White House chief of staff, Reince Priebus, says despite his past as a promoter of conspiracy theories, Bannon is smart and has the temperament for a leadership role in the White House. Earlier, President-elect Trump's campaign manager, Kellyanne Conway, said Bannon's appointment has to do with loyalty.
I think it's a great team, and I'll continue to work closely with both of them in some capacity to be decided. They complement each other. They both have the most important thing, which is the ear of the boss. People should look at the full resume. He's got a Harvard business degree. He's a naval officer. He has success in entertainment. I don't know if you're aware of that. And he certainly was a Goldman Sachs managing partner. Brilliant technician. Steve will be he'll be the chief strategist, and Reince is going to have a very operational role. I think they're both going to have a hand in communications, certainly in counsel to the president. And in my view, it's very important for President-elect Trump to have those around him who were with him to this point, because loyalty is very important to him. He's loyal to people, they're loyal to him. But also, it was a winning formula. So.
All right, let's discuss more with Bob Cusack. He's the editor-in-chief of The Hill, and he joins us from Washington. Good to see you, Bob.
Hey, Vlad.
So what are we missing here? What does Steve Bannon bring to a Trump administration that aligns with what the American people want? Should people be concerned over his ties to groups that many view as racist and anti-Semitic?
Sure, and that's why this pick has attracted a lot of criticism. Bannon does bring an outsider perspective. He is anti-establishment, and that's part of the wave that Donald Trump rode into the White House. So, but without a doubt, his handling of Breitbart.com and his statements in the past, he is a very controversial figure. Now, Republicans in Washington released a lot of statements praising Reince Priebus as Donald Trump's incoming chief of staff. I think it was a good move to tap Priebus for that position and have Bannon as this counselor/advisor, because Priebus is going to have to be dealing with congressional officials like Mitch McConnell and Paul Ryan, and Bannon is known for not being a fan of specifically Paul Ryan. So without a doubt, though, this is one of the most controversial things that Donald Trump has done, but he felt like he wanted to be loyal, and I do think that Trump is going to have to address this probably on multiple occasions.
Yeah, Bob, let's talk a little bit more about that. Donald Trump, as you know, gave an interview to 60 Minutes, and he was asked by Leslie Stahl why his transition team was full of lobbyists. Here's what he had to say.
You said that lobbyists own politicians because they give them money. You admitted you used to do it yourself. You have a transition team.
Lobbyists and special interests.
And you want to get rid of all of that.
I don't like it, no.
You don't like it. But your own transition team is filled with lobbyists.
It's the only people you have down there.
You have lobbyists from Verizon. You have lobbyists from the oil gas industry. You have food lobby.
Everybody's a lobbyist down there. That's what they are. They're lobbyists. They're special interests.
On your own transition
We're trying
team.
to clean up Washington. Look.
How can you clean
everything down there? There are no people. They're all people that work. That's the problem with the system. The system. Right now, we're going to clean it up. We're having restrictions on foreign money coming in. We're going to put on term limits, which a lot of people aren't happy about, but we're putting on term limits. We're doing a lot of things to clean up the system. But everybody that works for government, they then leave government and they become a lobbyist, essentially. I mean, the whole place is it's one big lobbyist.
Yeah, you're basically saying you have to rely on them, even though you want to get rid of them.
I'm saying that they know the system right now, but we're going to phase that out. You have to phase it.
So, Bob, here's the question. Donald Trump rose to prominence because he talked about draining the swamp. Clearly, his supporters were gravitating to him because he represented an anti-establishment view of the presidency and of what he would do should he be elected president. Now, faced with the reality of having been elected to the presidency, it's something that I've heard President Obama, President George W. Bush say, all presidents, in fact, once you win the job, the reality hits you. Could he fill those 4,000 jobs that he needs to fill before the inauguration if he doesn't have these lobbyists and somebody like Reince Priebus on the administration?
I think it'd be very difficult for Trump to do that. And we saw that with Obama. He had a very much anti-lobbying message, as you mentioned, but he had to then do a lot of waivers for top-level positions where he went around his own rule to appoint lobbyists or former lobbyists to key positions. Why? Because, well, they were smart and talented, and he felt like maybe they could change the system. And this is what Trump is in. I do agree with Trump in that you can't change the system without people who know how the system works. But is this going to be a very difficult thing? I mean, Vlad, he talked about term limits there. He's talking about congressional term limits. Mitch McConnell, the majority leader, has already suggested that's not going to happen. That's very, very unlikely to happen. So I think he's going to have to do some reforms. He's going to have to convince the voters that he's draining the swamp. Maybe not every campaign promise, but certainly he's got to change Washington. And as you mentioned, Washington usually wins even when you have an incoming president.
So since Bannon is anti-establishment and Priebus is obviously more establishment, how do you foresee their relationship playing out? I mean, the New York Times this weekend had an interesting article, and it said that this appointment of these two is how Donald Trump typically runs his business. He likes to have competing, if you will, power structures so that those folks below him are sort of duking it out and then he stays above that. And that's his sort of management style. What do you think of that?
Yeah, I think it's similar that when he tapped Kellyanne Conway, as well as Bannon at the same time when Lewandowski was pushed aside. I mean, Conway and Bannon, very different. Conway, a pollster who was on television a lot, Bannon more behind the scenes. So I think no doubt about it that, you remember, Trump was at odds with Priebus throughout much of the Republican primary. They kissed and made up, and certainly they had a good, productive relationship. But Bannon is the one that I think has his ear more than Priebus. But Priebus has got to work with the establishment to get things done. So in a way, yeah, they do complement each other. But I think you're right, Vlad. They're going to clash at times.
So who will? I mean, generally, the chief of staff, at least as far as I know, is usually the one that really has the president's ear, that has most of the power, most of the authority, manages the president's schedule, for example. But who do you see having more power here?
Well, I think throw out all the rules when Donald Trump is going to be president. I don't know. I definitely know that having interviewed Trump a number of times and seeing how his aides work around him. I mean, Trump is the final decider. He is the one that makes the decision. And certainly we had that choice on immigration reform. We all thought he was going to soften his position. And I think that's where the Bannon influence came in that day he went to Mexico and gave a speech. And then everyone thought he was going to back off the wall, maybe back off on a lot of his hardline immigration stance. And he did not. So I think that's going to be a big power struggle. And there's going to be, Obama's famous for saying no drama no drama Obama at the White House. There could be some drama in the Trump White House.
And briefly, what are you hearing about his son-in-law, Jared Kushner? I mean, there's a lot of people who think that ultimately the true sort of, not power, if you will, but the person who Mr. Trump listens to, President-elect Trump listens to the most now is Jared Kushner.
Yeah, no, I think a lot of the family members certainly have a big influence. Ivanka gave a great speech at the convention. And remember, it was the family who convinced Trump to pick Mike Pence over Christie, who would have been really a disaster of a pick because of those convictions, and Newt Gingrich. And that was a smart move. So I think his family is going to be giving him key advice. However, the family is also, as mentioned in the 60 Minutes interview, they're going to be dealing with his business. So there's going to be a lot of stories about, conflict of interest kind of things.
And finally, Bob, real quick, one of the more fascinating points that came out of Leslie's interview with President-elect Trump is the fact that he intends to seek President Obama's counsel on a number of issues. And Leslie today on CBS This Morning said that she believes that the president will be more than happy to provide some counsel, because you heard him sort of shift a little on his position on Obamacare. On the campaign trail, it was all repeal and replace. And then when he spoke to Leslie Stahl, he said, well, there are a couple of things that he's going to keep, which seemed to indicate that they came from President Obama pitching Donald Trump on some of the aspects of Obamacare that he would like to see remain in place.
That's right. And those are popular provisions. So I think it's politically and policy-wise smart for Trump to do that. And it's very interesting, too, that President Obama is willing to to basically give Trump advice. And you know, even though these guys have been at odds for years, they are part of an exclusive club. And I think it's smart for Trump and Obama to be talking, especially January, February, March. Trump should listen to some of that Obama advice. He's not going to listen to his policy advice, but just on the transition going from either the senator to a sitting president or a businessman to a sitting president.
Yeah, I think it's something, Bob, and you're pointing this out, that all of us will never be able to understand that very exclusive club of being president of the United States and how they treat each other and what kind of advice that they give to each other, even if they may be on different sides of the political spectrum, because as President Obama says, if President-elect Trump succeeds, then we all succeed.
Yeah, that's right. And look for what does President Obama, when he's no longer president, does he kind of go under the radar for a while? That's what George W. Bush did for a long time. So I would imagine Obama does that as well, but he won't be quiet forever.
All right, Bob Cusack at The Hill. Thank you so much, Bob. We always appreciate talking to you.
Thanks, Vlad.